Okay, cool. So, well, thanks everyone for joining. Promise you're gonna have like a lot of data. If you're a data geek like me, then you're gonna enjoy it. If you're not, I think hopefully that's gonna be like very, very informative. I'm super pumped to have Jason from Uplead joining me. I'm just going to go through the presentation and then hopefully, we'll yeah. So if you stick around, this is what you'll learn. You learn how to judge data quality, hopefully, what contribute to poor data. I think Jason is going to talk a lot about data decay, which is awesome, and then impact of poor data, which I'm going to show with stats. So, and if you stick around, I think we have also a lucky winner of $100 discount on your next invoice for QuickMail, and I'm sure Jason also have some stuff in his sleeves as well to give. Am I right, Jason? Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, we could definitely make something work on the Uplead side.
All right, cool. All right, so moving on. This is me. Yeah, I was doing cold plunge. That was fun, but so I figured I could use it because I've been in the cold outreach world for like since 2014. I created quickmail.com, which is software to send automation on email by email and LinkedIn. I'm the author of a book that I did in 2015, never updated and still sells, which is obviously a good sign. I've done 400 podcast episodes, so it's about like 8 years with a co-host. He's having a lead generation agency. I have the software, so we kind of like communicate together, and that's pretty good dynamic. And I've been also co-instructor on a Udemy course, again, something old, and I'm not touching it anymore. But just basically to tell you that I've been in the market for quite some time already. QuickMail is my product. So basically, we have our mission is really to help small and medium businesses to sell more. The way we're doing it at the moment is through email and LinkedIn outreach. And if you're asking how we're different, well, we are basically the best one when it comes to deliverability. I don't think anyone can beat us. We've been inventing the inbox rotation. We have a lot of things as well that we put up last year with deliverability AI and reward with AI, plus plenty of other things and some stuff that are going to come. So basically the best one. I'm also very geeky. So I come from a technical background. So you can expect to have really good stats and actually better stats than anywhere else in the way we're doing it. And if you are an agency, you're going to enjoy how you can manage multiple workspaces without having to increase your team count. And we also have LinkedIn unlimited senders. If you're using a LinkedIn automation tool, maybe you want to do both and then just save some bucks in the meantime. But that's basically our software in a nutshell. And yeah, Jason, I think that's your next.
Yep. I'm Jason. I'm with Uplead. Pretty much been in the data space for just under a decade. So really been familiar with data and how we've seen it change over the years, what's been going on with how it decays, and really just trying to stay on the forefront of the market. But what Uplead really does different in our market is we try to understand data is moving faster than it ever has in the past. So what we do to take it to the next step is an instant verification process with our clients. It's one of our unique sends to the market to make sure all of our clients are infusing their system and their CRM marketing tools with the best quality data, whether it be contact data for deliverability or account data for targeting. We just really try to make sure that we're giving our clients what they need to be successful.
Nice. I'll just move on to the next thing. I think you got some data here.
Yep, this was some of the information that I just kind of went over around Uplead. So what we've been doing, we're a B2B contact database, right? Our main point, one of the things that we do different, like I was saying, was that instant verification. Most databases, you're seeing 30, 60, 90-day verification points. We do that, but then we take it to the next level. When any of our clients are taking out data, we re-verify all that information to make sure that we're keeping those domains, like what Jeremy was talking about, keeping those domains nice and clean so that you get those high deliverables, right? Because it's a combination of all the approaches, whether it's email, LinkedIn, phone, it's a combination to get the results that you're looking for.
Nice. You guys provide email, LinkedIn, phone. Do you provide other things,
Yeah.
Twitter, whatever?
Any social
Facebook.
preference, any social profile that we're able to gather the information on, we provide to our clients. The most common one, obviously, is social media is going to be the LinkedIn because it's a B2B database. But if
Mm,
we get Twitter or any of those handles that we can find, that information is also provided.
got it. Right. So here's my promises whenever we do webinars is that I bring a lot of data straight from our software. So that's not something that most people actually share, but we do. So I'm gonna go through it. But before that, I thought to myself, okay, we are a tool that actually automate the sending. So how can we actually, well, what is data quality for us? What does that mean? So to me, that means like six things. The first one is accuracy. So basically, are the contact detail correct? Like, am I contacting John, but it's called, Sarah or some stuff like that? And then the third thing is the freshness. So basically, is the data up to date? Because obviously people change jobs, they change roles and stuff like that. The fourth thing is completeness. So that's what I was saying to Jason. Like, do we have all the data we need? Do we have like Twitter? Do we have LinkedIn? All those sort of things. Phone numbers. The fifth one is deliverability. That's something I am super qualified to talk about because obviously, is the email verified and does it actually lead to a valid email? Is super important for us as a email automation platform on that side of the business. And then the last thing is engagement signal, as in like, will they actually buy? Are they in a position of buying? So basically, if they're advertising a job that they are looking for a developer, maybe they will be open to outsourcing development. So those are the six criteria that I looked at. And then I asked myself, okay, given that, like, what kind of data can I extract from QuickMail in order to infer data quality so I can give you guys some interesting stats to look at so you can look for yourself if you're doing better, you're doing worse, like those side of things. And hopefully, compare data provider if you need to compare them. So basically I came up like with 2-3 things, but the biggest one is obviously the bounce rate for deliverability and the accuracy, because obviously if you got like a wrong email, then it's also part of the accuracy problem. And then the unsubscribe reason, which I'm going to cover a little bit later. And then finally, we'll look as well as the positive versus negative reply rate. That's for engagement signal, I figured, which basically means like, are those people, open to your proposition or your CTA? So without further ado, this is a few things. The first thing I asked myself is like, what are the source of the leads? So people are uploading data to QuickMail, and I figured out like, okay, I want to know maybe a bit selfishly, where are the leads coming from? And we could see like very quickly that actually like probably like 92% plus 4%, so 96.6% are actually coming straight from importing, whether you're importing from Google Drive or you're importing from CSV. I'm actually surprised that so many people are importing for CSV. Do you guys import from CSV? If you can put it into the chat. I can have the chat window open as well. If you could put chat or Google. Damn, Jason, help me out. I
Yeah,
don't see
we're
the
having
chat
some.
window.
I'm looking at the chat window right now,
Oh,
so
cool,
we're
cool.
getting some yeses, and it doesn't surprise me with the CSV. Every system takes one, so I feel like a lot of people do the CSV import for that reason.
Yeah, I was
Because we got
surprised
another
actually because CSV is probably one of the biggest reason why, data are getting stale, because they don't get updated.
agree
So
100%.
yeah, I was like super surprised, but it could also be like people export, to their CSV and then they import right away to QuickMail.
Hmm.
Anyway, I was curious because as you can see, like even for like there is like 7% or like 6% left, those things actually encompass a lot of different ways of uploading. So you have like a lot of different, way of doing it. One of them is obviously through the API. You can think of like, hey, maybe we do an integration with our existing data providers. We don't have to export first to CSV, let the data go stall, and then, import to the software at some point, which will obviously be bad. But a lot of things are also coming from CRM, integration. So we got Pipedrive, HubSpot. And then to a later extent, a smaller extent, we have things from when you see LinkedIn on inbox is we have the ability to create leads automatically when you receive replies from those people. So if you could have like specific inboxes, and if you receive replies to those, then we create automatically a lead, and then you can generate a campaign on them, which hopefully is the freshest data that you could have. So a little bit surprised by those stats, but those are what they are. And if this is also a reflection of you, I may be encouraging you to figure out like, how can I actually make that link faster between the data provider and the actual outreach tool. Moving on, unsubscribe reasons. So that's one thing we do. I think we are the only one to do that in the market, actually. But basically, when people unsubscribe on QuickMail, they have the opportunity to they get presented a form straight away that tells them like, hey, why did you unsubscribe for this campaign? And then we use this to actually, feed that information to the campaign builder to just let them know, why most people unsubscribe. And you could think like, well, why would people do that? But actually, like a fifth of people almost are actually just replying. So most of people just ignore it, they just unsubscribe and then they move on. But you do have like sometimes, some people replying. And so if we zoom in on the reason why people not replying, unfortunately, you got like 20%, 28%, which is not very helpful, which means, others or like a different choice, like something else. But other than that, you could see that you got 28% of people who say they have no need for this here. And that's basically, to me, that's a bad targeting. And that comes back to data. What data do you actually, pick? Again, if I'm contacting financial planners, I'm not going to sell them a solution that I will sell, a chiropractor, or I will sell a dentist. Like, so you have to be making sure that they actually need your solution before reaching out to them. And hopefully your data provider can help you out with that. So we have no need here. That's kind of something you should avoid having. The second one is, I'm not the right person for this. That's another bad targeting. And that could indicate two things. Either your campaign is going after the wrong people, or it could be that the data that you're receiving is actually wrong. Maybe it's Sarah that is mentioned at the head of marketing you contact. And in fact, that's not Sarah, that's John or something else like that. Anyway, we good? Moving on. The other thing I looked at is email validation. How many people here are actually validating their email? So if you can just put like a thumbs up. I don't know if it's easy to put a thumbs up, but just put yes if you're validating your emails. I see a few thumbs up. That's nice. Just put yes if you can validate, if you validate your email. No, if you don't. I can see a lot of people are saying yes. That's awesome. Yeah, you should definitely do that. So, but here's the reality on our system. And bear in mind, I don't know if people validated before, and they probably do. But once they come in your system, you have, I think we integrate with 6 different email providers. And so they could use any of these. But in 84% of the case, they don't use any email provider. So we don't know if they pre-validated it or if they didn't. But that's basically, the system. And as you can see, you got like 6% of valid emails, 6.8% of valid emails only of the people who are validating. Do we have like a bigger part? Yes. So this is basically all the different validation that we have on our system. Yeah, Never Bounce is actually one of the best one that we have. And then Zero Bounce is actually not so great for us. So I have to re-verify again. Jason, do you actually offer email verifications as part of your stuff?
That is part of our service. That is one of the things that we talk about. That's kind of what we do. I was taking that last step prior to even extracting data points. We're running that. That's not what that instant verification. It's a recheck of that email address for that exact reason. So it just makes it so you don't have to go to a third party like a Never Bounce or a Zero Bounce when you're extracting the data. It's nice and clean.
That makes total sense to me. And that's also probably like, why you got like a few people not, only validating on our system, because they validated upfront, upstream, which actually makes sense. Okay, so reply sentiment. This is what interesting. I don't know what your reply sentiment is, guys, which is basically the ratio between when you receive a reply between the people saying like, yes, it's great, versus the people saying like, no, we don't want your solution. And I'm actually positively surprised. Those stats are coming from 1st of January, but I'm actually pretty surprised and positively surprised that most of it are actually positive. So for people who think like, yes, it's hard to do cold outreach. Yes, it's hard to get replies. But when you get replies, apparently like 60% of the replies are more positive than negative, which is actually pretty encouraging, if you ask me. I was thinking it would be like the opposite. So I don't know about you guys, but for me, that's a good sign and a healthy sign. Moving on, bounce rate versus reply. So this is the first thing I actually check, and I think that's the most relevant to maybe your call today, which is if you're actually not having good data, how much does that actually impact your reply rate? And so even though it's hard to actually find an actual exact correlation, causation, you can definitely see the correlation here. So basically on the y-axis, we got reply rates, which means like how many people reply per 100 emails you're sending. And on the bottom horizontal axis, you have the bounce rate, which basically means like how many of your emails you're sending are actually bouncing. And yes, there are some crazy data points, like people more than 60% of the email they're sending are bouncing, which, I mean, I don't need to tell everyone, but it's like super bad. I think these days, the really good stuff, yeah, it's insane. I totally agree. In this case, what we have as an average on the system, I think it's about less than 5%. And I think it's really good because if you look like a few years ago, it was like 9%. And I think over the years, I think the system became better and better and better. And I think that's definitely a really good sign as well. These are only for Gmail. I try to split with multiple providers. So we got a graph for Gmail, we got a graph from Outlook, and we got a graph for Custom SMTP. And the idea here is really to figure out, is there a difference between providers? And the answer is like, not really. They all sort of like show the same thing. The more bounce you have, the less reply you have. And the other thing I want to mention is like, if you have like 60% bounce rate, you can see they still got some replies. It's not out of the 40 remaining. So basically what I'm saying is like, we do remove the bounce rate in order to figure out the reply rate. So if you're sending to 100 people and then 90 bounces, and then you got one reply, still 10% reply rate. It's 1 out of the 10 that are remaining, right? So we could very quickly see that, the less bounces you have, the more replies you have, definitely. And that's valid as well for Outlook. And that's also valid for custom SMTP. Although you do have some weird stuff with custom SMTPs. They always act very weirdly. That is like, in this case, you could have like a lot of bounce and still a lot of replies. But those are like custom infrastructures. Thanks for the love, Mr. L. All right, that's up to you, Jason. Just let me know when I should move to the next slide.
Yeah. So okay, to start, I guess. So I think it's really important to understand what is data decay, right? So we look at it in two ways, and I think Jeremy, you hit on a couple of those earlier, and how they hit, right? There's contact data decay and company data decay. Companies, their data doesn't decay as quickly as a contact. Contact data decay is very fast in today's market. But where company data decay really comes to affect you is that targeting. You were mentioning it on the unsubscribe rates and things to that nature. So if your targeting is off, it really starts at the data level, right? Rerunning your client base. Any client I work with, I tell them once a year, you should be looking at your company data. And what I mean by that is run the clients that signed with you, and then also run your clients that decided to churn. There's two reasons. Are there any similarities in the data, right? If you could find similarities between data points, company sizes, I think, Jeremy, you mentioned it before about really your targeting. If you know last year, 80% of your business came from, let's say, the manufacturing vertical, and even more specifically, steel manufacturers under 50 million in revenue, that's where you want to spend your time. It's not about covering everything under the sun. It's about really going after your true ICP. Because when you're going outside of that, it costs your company money in the long run. There's the churn rate, there's all that, bringing on a bad client. And I think it all starts on the company data side there. So that's the first thing I would do, is constantly keep your company data enriched. Look at that at a yearly basis, even maybe once, twice a year, just to make sure your targeting is correct. Just like that is going on, we want to look at contact decay. That is the thing that has really spiked. We can go back to 2019, and we started to see those spikes with COVID happening. Then there was the Great Resignation when everyone was
Mm,
resigning and
yep.
changing jobs. Nowadays, we see what's going on in the government here in the US. People are moving around. It's just constant. So you have to, the contact data decay is huge. And I think we can go to the next slide if I'm not mistaken.
There you
I
go.
got ahead of myself.
Yeah, a bit.
So, talking about that type of decay, it's really why? Why do contacts move so fast? It's not just the moving of the jobs, right? We have the employee turnover, we have people getting laid off. There's so much going on in today's market, right? But that's just the people moving. When I say lack of governance, that's lack of data restrictions. Like how are you getting your data in? Who's uploading that data, right? Are you doing it manual through CSV, through manual uploads? There could be human error involved. And then once again, how often are you refreshing it? Jeremy, I think you mentioned unsubscribes. I wrote that down because I think that was a good one.
Mhm.
Now, that goes back into siloed systems too. If you're getting unsubscribes from certain systems and not in others, and they're not all talking to each other, you have to be able to know that. You need to standardize the data, and that's where that enrichment comes in again. So we kind of went over a few of the costs, right? You mentioned poor targeting, which results into increased churn. So elevated bounce rates on the contact data. What is that doing? Why is it elevating? An elevated bounce rate, how is that hurting you? Is it hurting when you showed that slide with 60%?
Yeah,
Like I even cringed. Like I tell
it's
my
huge.
clients, you want to be under 5% because anything above, you're you're pushing the limits in today's market, especially with all the traps out there from honeypots to accept all email addresses. And then obviously there's the invalids. Like companies are very good. There's a reason they put an accept all email address on. They want to get spammers. They're not were they running thousand inbox? Oh, the 60% bounce. Sorry. Yeah, I have no idea why a company got a 60% bounce either. I don't know who they were using. The only reason I could think of somebody getting a 60% bounce is just using a stale, outdated data list. And that goes back to what Jeremy was saying about the CSVs. Because a list
Yeah, it's
is
purchase list, basically.
it's horrible. And that's where I tell anyone where they buy a list, you can sometimes get value out of them, but you got to rerun those. You've got to run them through either one of those email checkers that you were saying, Jeremy, or another data provider. Because if that list is bad, I'll answer that to L. I think I have a stat in here. It was from Forrester. 70% now, or I'm sorry, it came from Forbes, which got it from Gartner's. Over 70.4% of data is decaying now year over year on B2B contacts. So the reason that you'd have a 60% bounce is using stale data. And it those bounces are killing you. It's not just hurting your targeting. What's going to happen is if you continue down that road, the worst thing can happen is you get marked as a spammer, which then it's going to kill your top of funnel because your message is just not getting delivered. That's like the highest fee. When you go to a cost example, that's why I bolded it, tagged as a spammer. But without refreshing your data, there's also other fees. You have your CRM fees because you're hosting that data in your CRM. And a lot of those CRMs, I know you mentioned HubSpot, I know they have different levels based on the number of
Yep.
contacts you have in them. That goes back to that siloed systems as well. If they're overwriting each other, that's why you want to standardize it, have one central area of truth that is going to be the overriding factor on each of those systems. So if it's your like I use Salesforce, that's our nucleus. It overwrites all of our systems to the point where when Salesforce is updated, all of our other data gets updated from it to make sure we're keeping that good deliverables, right? Because we have them all synced. and not working off of just a CSV upload like you were saying, Jeremy, because that's where you get that siloed system again. Where is that data coming from? So that goes into that hosting fees. Elevated bounce rates, you're going to see less meetings booked. You can be marked as you can become marked as a spammer if you continue to market to those. You can be marked just by a company because of how they have their setup, right? So there is a ton of different factors that go into the data. If we go to the next slide, I think I have a few. Yeah, here are some stats. So these are our stats, right? We've used when we were doing our data. I ran this with 1900. The first one had 1977 contacts in it in our post. That was our campaign one, and campaign two. These show our reply rates. So we had a 2.9% reply rate. That does not include any sort of out of office. These were actually people replying to those emails. And I know you were talking about positive versus negative. 14 of those replies were positive. And from those 14, we were able to book 10 meetings. That
Nice.
was just off of the email. This was not including any sort of phone campaign. This was an email marketing campaign that our team ran. But what was impressive was our bounce rate was below 1% on each of these campaigns. And that goes back to refreshing the data because as we see on the slide to the right, this is the Forbes article where it was reaching over 70%. So that's where refreshing that data. We're revalidating it. And I know, Jeremy, you asked about that. We have with Uplead, some of our clients even want us to take their CRM, not just enrich with the data they have in their CRM, because no database has 100% coverage. They just don't exist. But what they want to do is say, hey, can we at least check? Can we run emails through your cadencing thing so to confirm that we have good data that we're sending out? We allow that for that reason, because you want to be able to make sure all those data points are active. On what percentage of contacts overall use catch-all? I do not know the percentage that use catch-all emails or accept-alls, but there are a lot of companies out there that do that, and it's one of the hardest things to check. One of the things that I know with our system, when we pull out an email to answer Ella's question, you get one of three notifications. You get a valid, meaning that email is good. Invalid, meaning we're going to tag it. It doesn't, you don't get to, we don't allow you to export it if you want a valid email only. And then the third option we get is an accept all. Those are what you're talking about, Al. And some people want to download those. I personally don't. Like, it's great to know if it's an accept all, but I want to make sure the emails I'm sending are valid. Because if you send 100 emails to Adobe, because they have 100 people that meet your ICP, ideal client profile, or ideal target, and it's an accept all email, you're going to get marked by them. Like, that's why they're created. But if you know like the two emails on there that are the correct ones, your message is at least getting delivered. So for me, I'm a fan of really not going after the accept alls for that reason.
Yeah, we have some clients who actually create domains specifically for testing the accept all. And they will send just like an empty email or something like that just to verify, is it bouncing? They don't really care if it goes into the spam. Like they only
Right.
care like, is it bouncing or not, to validate and inform their next campaign, which will use like a better domain with better reputation, just exactly for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think those are like the hardest ones to identify are those accept alls. And it's really about it's the results you don't see. You think they're getting through. You're thinking they're being delivered. And on top of that, your sales team is then following up on potentially those leads, emailing them more when you should have them at least tagged in your system. It doesn't mean the data in your system, it's still good data to have. Just because it's marked as, and if we know it's marked as an accept all, or you know it's marked as bad data, you want to tag that information You don't want to just expunge it from your CRM, because what's going to happen is, let's say those people come back, they sign up for another webinar, they use that same email address, the same, you're going to then continue that cycle. And that's where we talked about that siloed data points, right? We want, by unifying the data points and standardizing the data, it saves you money in the long run, because you're not going to be having to refresh every single one of your providers, whether you have a CRM, you have an email marketing tool. Some people are using DSPs, right? When you move up market, all that information is being funneled. You just want to make sure you're using the most accurate information to really work on that targeting. And that's where I think it starts when I go back to my original slide, when I was talking about company versus contact. You first start on the company side to identify, okay, what is our true ideal client profile, our total, or by enriching it, you can understand who is our total addressable market, right? And that's really your world. From there, I think, Jeremy, you mentioned it in your slide earlier with people being in market using certain data points, intent providers, right? So now you know your world being that total addressable market, and you've gotten that from your data points by enriching your client base. Now it's taking those next steps. Okay, I have my world. Who's in market? Working with intent providers that can help you identify clients that are actively searching for your services, right? Now you know where to be fishing. Then it's going to those contacts. So it all starts, in my opinion, on the company side, making sure that data is clean. And then that moves down to the contact on the bottom end of the funnel, if you have to think about it like a marketing funnel, right? And the bottom end of that funnel is going to be those contacts that you're spitting out with valid emails, because you don't want to be marked as that spammer or go into all invalid emails. You want to keep your emails clean, and it all starts with the data, right? And drilling down further and further. And then I guess if you have my last slide here before we get into Q&A would be, I guess we can advance onto our last slide here from Uplead, like Jeremy was saying. Like if you're looking for any sort of sales, like any more marketing data points, contact data points, like that, more than happy to have a conversation, talk through what you're looking for, what's your need, because I know when someone asked about the catch-all, the percentages, everything's going to be different across verticals too. So whether it's response rates, I know Jeremy was mentioning response rates, all that gets done into the verticals, and that goes back to your ICP and your targeting. I guess we can go on to the next slide there, and then yeah, that's what I have until we get to Q&A.
No, thanks, Jason. So my next slide is for me. If you guys like, the type of data that I'm sharing more on my newsletter. So if you're a little bit of a data geek or want to be ahead on and understand what's the latest trend on cold outreach or email automation or LinkedIn automation, just you could go ahead and then register to my newsletter. I try to send an email every week with some of the latest things.